Good evening, everybody. We are having a very interesting session today. This is doing this driving refinery towards a sustainable future. We have Dr. Partha Mehta from Reliance, Mr. Gurminder Singh from Shell, Mr. Siddhartha Saha from Exxon, Mr. Rajesh Samarth from CLG, and Mr. Kait Couch from Honeywell UOP. It's my honor to extend a warm welcome to you all at the 28th Energy Technology Meet in the city of Hyderabad. As we gather for this important session, we are at crossroads where energy security, availability, and affordability remain vital on one side, and decarbonization, energy transition, and net zero on the other side. For over a century, refineries have been the bedrock of industrial growth, delivering fuels that power economies. But the world is changing. Decarbonization is redefining value from barrels to carbon intensity. Global and national trends suggest that oil will remain important contributor for primary energy mix alongside the low carbon energy solutions. India's refinery sector remains a pillar of energy security and economic strength. With a refining capacity of roughly 258 MMTPA, the second largest in Asia and fourth globally, it balances domestic demand with exports and will continue to drive our journey towards Viksit Bharat. With growing energy needs, the refining capacity is expected to reach around 310 MMTPA. Yet this critical role of oil comes with a new responsibility to make oil sustainable. The path forward lies in efficiency, innovation, petrochemical integration, optimizing heat and steam systems, using natural gas and renewable to power utilities, and advancing green hydrogen, CCUS, SAF, and biofuel co-processing. Together, these initiatives will transform refineries into efficient, low-carbon, multi-energy complexes that power growth while safeguarding the planet Earth. It's a matter of utmost pride for me to share the dais with 5 industry stalwarts who have not just witnessed but shaped the evolution of refining technology. We'll have sessions with with your all consent, around 15 minutes each for each presenter, followed by the open question and answer sessions. Let's welcome our senior-most panelist, Dr. Partha Mehta. Dr. Partha Mehta, President, Strategy and Initiatives, Reliance Industries, brings over 46 years of the leadership experience, a visionary who led Jamnagar transformation from a refining complex into a global energy icon, optimizing configuration, advancing COTC integration, and charting its path to net zero. Over to Dr. Mehta.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. And thank you, CHT, for inviting me to this ETM. There have been around 28 ETMs, and by my count, I have spoken in roughly 18 of them. So I'm happy to continue that. So the theme of the conference is we want to provide energy for Viksit Bharat. And in order to do that in the next 20 to 23 years, we have to understand what are the challenges of the changing energy landscape. Next is our standard disclaimer. I'm going to talk, the structure of my presentation is, first I'll give introduction on what is changing in the energy landscape, Next, I'll talk about new energy, and the next is how this new energy or the changing energy landscape impacts hydrocarbon processing, that is refining and petrochemicals, and then we'll draw some conclusion. The most important thing is to understand what is changing in the energy. So in the past, it was an unipolar energy world. And in the future, it will be a multipolar energy world. In the past, whenever we thought about energy, it only meant fossil. But in the future, it will include fossil, but also include new energy. Fossil in order of the volume consumed by the world, oil is number 1, coal is number 2, and gas is number 3. In future, along with this, we will have renewable power, bioenergy, low carbon hydrogen in order to distinguish with today's high carbon hydrogen, and abated fossil. Actually, fossil energy is not bad, but the CO2 emitted from the fossil energy is bad. So in the past, and this is for the whole human history, fuels was the primary energy source. But tomorrow, it will be fuel and power, because power, we will get it from sun, wind, and other sources. In the past, in order to get power, we had to use fuel. In other words, power was a secondary energy source. In future, with fuel and power as the primary energy source, there will be products called e-fuel and e-chemicals. Let's look at the trilemma which everyone talks about. Supply security. Now, unfortunately, we were not endowed with a lot of fossil fuel reserves, but we have ample sun and wind, and hence the supply security will rise up with the new energy. Affordability is still a problem with the new energy, but with innovation, it's going to improve substantially. And sustainability is non-negotiable. We have to care for the next generation. Let's look at renewable energy. It can come from a variety of sources, which include solar, again in order, solar, wind, hydro, then nuclear, and a niche source is geothermal and tidal. In solar, photovoltaic dominates, and it is the #1 renewable energy source. In wind, it is roughly 50-50 in the world, not in India, but onshore and offshore are equally contributing. Hydro, the important thing is it can generate power, but also it can store renewable power. Nuclear, it is seeing a resurgence with what is known as small modular reactor, or SMR. In fact, this resurgence is not because of our industry, but because of data centers which have to do some heavy-duty AI, artificial intelligence. Today's status on renewable energy is relatively simple. The generation cost is less than fossil, but unfortunately, because renewable energy is fluctuating, the storage cost continues to be higher than fossil. So, in the upcoming, we will see electrification because it has become the primary energy source. Let's talk about bioenergy. And India, in fact, is fortunate to be a very large agricultural major and also having one of the highest cattle population in the world. So we need to convert this bio-waste to energy. But in biomass processing, we still have to solve the lignin challenge because lignin is around 20–25%, and if it is a waste, we cannot make bioenergy affordable. The three fuels which are of utmost importance in India, one is ethanol, and we heard about 20% ethanol blending being achieved. The second is SAF, SAF, and the reason is very simple, because in the next 7 to 8 years, the aviation fuel demand is going to double, and we cannot continue to have polluting fossil jet. And the third is the CBG, which can increase, which can supplement our gas or gas economy, and it is important to increase it from 6% today to 15% in the future. In chemicals, today the chemicals, most people think of chemical as olefins and aromatics. But if it is a bio-based route to chemicals, the major intermediate are acids and alcohol. Today, the number one alcohol intermediate is what is called BDO, butanediol, from which we can make a variety of biopolymers. And it's not written in the slide, but the most important biopolymer is polylactic acid. In other words, lactic acid is the number one bioacid intermediate for chemicals. The good news in biochemicals or bioplastic is it is both biodegradable and compostable. So the principle in this new energy landscape is circularity. We should maximize the above ground carbon recycle in order to reduce or minimize extraction of underground fossil carbon. Let's talk about hydrogen. Of course, we have a hydrogen mission of 5 million tons per year. Now, green hydrogen can be either via electrolysis, that is splitting water with renewable power, or it can be also from biomass. So, electrolyzer can be alkaline, PEM or proton exchange membrane, or AEM, anion exchange membrane, or SOEC, which is solid oxide electrolyzer cell. Each has its pluses and minuses. Alkaline is eminently scalable. PEM and AEM are compact, and it can be started up easily and shut down easily. In other words, very flexible. And SOEC is the highest efficiency electrolyzer to make green hydrogen. The problem, yes, the cost has come down from $5 to $4, but it is still 2 times more expensive than fossil hydrogen. And that has to be reduced or bridged. The other interesting and exciting hydrogen is turquoise hydrogen, which is made from methane pyrolysis. And if carbon, comes as a co-product, if it can be monetized, then we get two birds for one stone. We get hydrogen as an energy fuel, and we get carbon as a petrochemical feedstock. So biomass can be made into biohydrogen or green hydrogen via gasification, syngas to hydrogen, and we should, because about 50% product is CO2, we should also monetize biogenic CO2. Now, this is changing energy landscape. How does it impact our business or hydrocarbon processing? So processing, I am defining as refining and petrochemicals. So drivers will be maximum electric motors and elimination of steam turbines. Heating will be minimum fired heaters, maximum air preheat, and essentially, again, no steam generation. Again, maximum heat exchange. For reaction, up till now, all reactions with thermochemistry. Tomorrow, we want more reactions of electro and photochemistry, because again, remember, they are become the primary energy source. And we have to, with electrification, we have to look at rotary reactors, rotary columns, and such things. Separation, we have to remove this mindset of sieve tray or even valve tray. We have to go towards advanced column internals and rotary separator. In other words, efficiency will be the king in the future. Let's talk about petrochemicals. Now, steam cracker makes olefins, ethylene, which is the #1 chemical in the world. But steam cracker, in the next 5 years, there will be no today's steam cracker. There are 4 options coming up. It is H cracker, where we use low carbon hydrogen as fuel and they electrify the olefin separation. E cracker, which directly uses electricity in order to supply the endothermic heat for steam cracking. The R cracker is very, very interesting. It is rotary cracker, and the name of the reactor is called rotodynamic reactor. It looks and works just like a gas turbine. It's a turbo machinery, and essentially the rotational energy goes into pulse heating for steam cracking via what are called rotary and stationary vanes. And with these vanes, what happens is you may have 8 to 12 stages, so roughly 10 stages, and for every pulse heating, you get some cracking into olefins and propylene. Another very, very interesting steam cracker of the future will be what is called N cracker, where this SMR, that is the small modular nuclear reactors, they will supply both the electricity as well as the heat for the cracking reaction. Now, it cannot be the conventional boiling water reactor or pressurized water reactor or even heavy water reactor. It has to be helium-cooled pebble bed SMR, and that will drive the steam cracking of the future. Which one will win? We don't know, but it is a 4-horse race, which is, and by 2030, we will know who is the winner or who is leading. Let's talk about refining. So refining, and there are lots of refiners in this auditorium. For refining, basically, there are only two prescriptions, two medicines to be taken. One is efficiency, increase the EII, that is Energy Intensity Index, to below 80. Now, if your refinery is above 100, in fact, higher is bad. So above 100, it is not efficient, and you need to do something about it. But the goal is to go below, as low as possible, and 80 is a good target. So we can do lots of things, but at the end of the day, refiners have to increase EII. The second is PII, Petrochemical Intensity Index. And since our demand for refined fuels and petrochemicals are both rising, and since our imports of petrochemicals are higher, we need to go towards what is called COTC, with PII above 60. Now, today, Indian refineries are below 10. That is below world average. There are some refiners in India which are between 20 and 25, which is good. But China has already built 8 refineries with PII between 40 and 50. We need to leapfrog or pole vault over the Chinese refineries for the petrochemical supply in the future with PII above 60. There is no such refinery. There is one being built with Lummus technology, but India should be the next place for a high PII COTC. So essentially what it means is we have to reimagine refining with the new energy or the changing energy landscape. The last slide, or the last but one slide. So fuel is no longer the primary energy. We need to minimize fuel consumption, and it's actually efficiency increase is virtuous, doubly virtuous, because it reduces OPEX, which is important, and it reduces emissions, which is equally important. Transition, we have to have new energy as the substitute fuel. Each refinery should have a task force for efficiency, for petrochemicals, and electrification. Those are very, very critical for the future. Hydrogen, it is still not affordable, but it is important for hard-to-abate processing, especially refining and petrochemicals. India should completely exploit its biomass potential for bioenergy, biofuels, and biopetrochemical. Future, the fossil fuel will slowly run into the sunset. It will be the sunrise of new energy. We have to reimagine hydrocarbon processing, that is refining and petrochemicals, with this changing energy landscape. We have to increase petrochemicals, we have to increase efficiency, we have to increase electrification, and any change, we require innovation. So future belongs to efficiency and innovation. And this is my last and the favorite slide. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Mehta, for that insightful and thought-provoking presentation. Mr. Mehta spoke on changing energy landscape, outlining how the global energy system is moving from a unipolar fossil fuel-dominated model to a multipolar ecosystem of the new energy sources. He also talked about the trilemma, that is energy supply security, affordability, and sustainability. He also highlighted the global transition from a fossil-dominated past to a future shaped by new energy, that is renewable, bioenergy, and low-carbon hydrogen. He mentioned that petrochemical with witness innovative crackers apart from the conventional steam crackers. The future belongs to those who prioritize efficiency and innovation, reimagining energy system for sustainability and resilience. Thank you so much. Let's welcome our next speaker, Mr. Gurminder Singh, Director, Decarbonization Solutions, Shell. He oversees the licensing of Shell's refining, petrochemical, and decarbonization technologies in Asia Pacific and MENA region. Over to Mr. Singh.
Hi, good evening, everyone. In a world reshaped by artificial intelligence, geopolitical shifts, and rising energy demand, the challenge of balancing energy security with climate ambition has never been more urgent. As technology accelerates and population grows, the choices we make today will define whether we secure reliable energy while transitioning to a net zero future. So what we'll be doing is exploring the balance between energy security and decarbonization. A cautionary note, pretty detailed, but what it really says is that please don't make any investment decision based on what you hear from me today. There is another one this time because I'll be talking about Shell scenarios. So what we say is uncertainties ahead. Shell scenarios are not intended to be projections or forecasts of the future, so please keep this in mind. What I'll be covering today is pressures shaping today's energy system, a mixed global picture, technology trends and timelines, going through the past, what was energy and data-driven systems last 2 decades, where are we today and how it will shape up in the future. Energy security scenarios, I mentioned about it. I'll talk about 4 energy transition archetypes, 3 scenarios, changes to the energy system, policy emissions gap, and some key takeaways. All that in 15 minutes, that's the target. Shell Catalysts and Technologies, this is the place where I belong. We provide tools, technologies, and insights to help energy companies thrive through the energy transition. We have a booth and we have a team, so please come and talk to us about the solutions, what we can provide. Pressures shaping today's energy systems, societies are indeed trying hard to meet the rising energy demand, and where this energy demand is coming. We have been hearing a lot right from a number of panelists and also to the minister that we are all looking towards clean and affordable energy. And that is the key. With rising middle-class population, a lot of AI and data center demand, the energy needs are ever increasing. Countries are working on power systems that are reinforced by gas, nuclear, and large energy storage systems. And at the same time, there is a pressure of decarbonization. We need to cut down the emissions. There is a rapid build-out of renewables and electrification across power systems, and a push to scale up hydrogen, carbon capture, and low-carbon fuels. If we look all around the world, what are the mixed global picture, what we see? If we look at North America and a place, California, there is a rapid growth in AI. We are talking about driverless electric taxis, which are common, and CO2 emissions are down to almost 1/3 since 2005. And whilst we see in Brazil, in South America, there is limited electric vehicle adoption. Yet, they are the lowest energy carbon footprint. They rely heavily on sugarcane ethanol and hydropower. If we look at European Union, Poland, coal still provides more than half of the country's power generation. And in China, all public transport, including taxis, are electric, and we have more than 100,000 charging points. What it really shows that each country has its own journey based on where they are, what kind of energy systems are available, and what they can do to cut down the emissions. So each country, as we go forward, will make choices based on availability and providing clean and affordable energy to their citizens. So in a challenging world, 4 key drivers of change emerge. First and foremost, energy security becomes very important for the governments. So governments are looking at diversification of supply. Shifting away from fossil fuels, I have spent 7 years in Middle East, and I have seen the big operators like Aramco and ADNOC, how much investment they have made in alternate energies. Huge investment, whilst they are securing a use for their oil. And that's why you see that they keep on making joint ventures, because they still need a place where the oil will be used, which really fuels their economy. Many more people will need energy for a better life. When we talk about 2 billion, we are talking about the rising middle class. With the rising middle class, there is more energy demand. The ongoing global surface temperature is rising. That is a fact, and we need to address that. And accelerated technology change is underway. What it means that the digital and physical systems are converging. The way energy is produced, distributed, and consumed will change in the coming years and decades. Modularization is accelerating deployment, and that is the key thing. We are not looking at bespoke plants. We are talking about factory-built renewables, batteries, and carbon capture units, which are all modular in nature. The system is becoming decentralized and intelligent. Circularity and efficiency are rising. With digital tracking and precision manufacturing, we can really cut waste and emissions at the same time. Just looking back, what I mentioned, that how the technology deployment has changed over the last few decades and how it will shape in the coming decades. If we talk about the data-driven systems, we first saw the iPhone, Apple introduced in 2007, and the mature search engine algorithms, Google, and first videos uploaded to YouTube in 2005. Fast forward to current time, we have more smartphones than people. We have 9 billion Google searches per day and 30,000 hours of video added to YouTube per hour. We are talking about per hour. If we talk about how things will shape up in the data-driven systems in the future, definitely we'll see a lot of virtual and autonomous services and pervasive artificial intelligence. Talking about the energy-driven system, we saw the first electric cars from Tesla around a decade or two ago. Solar, if we talk about, only 17 gigawatt of installed capacity, and that too with subsidies. And first commercial grid-scale battery was only 20 megawatt. As of now, in 2025, we are talking about 20 million EVs and PHEVs, which is almost 1/4 of the production. We are seeing 600 gigawatt of solar PV installed every year and 80 gigawatt of grid-scale batteries. In the future, we are talking about 10 years or 2 decades, all new vehicles are electric, and that is the main cause of decline of oil, what we are talking about, because most of that is fueling transportation. 1,000 gigawatt of solar installation per year and 3 terawatt of grid-scale batteries. That's the kind of scenario we are looking into energy-driven systems in the future. So in response to security, climate, economic growth, and technology pressure, there are 4 different types of archetypes are visible based on how vulnerable countries are to security pressures and economic volatility. We're talking about innovation wins. So these are countries like USA and major resource holders like Middle East countries, which are very competitive, and they are determined to protect their economic positions. We are talking about Green Dream. No wonder it is all about legislature framework and structures to force change. We are talking about European Union. Great Wall of Change, it is China creating its own energy supply with large coal and reserves and solar, and with its manufacturing capability and infrastructure. And then the 4th most interesting one is the surfers. and we call it emergent surfers, countries like India seizing new opportunities for growth, leapfrogging traditional development pathways. This brings us to the scenarios which I was talking about, that what is scenario thinking? And Shell has been doing scenarios for more than 50 years. Shell scenarios, as I qualified earlier, are not intended to be projections or forecasts of the future. They are possible worlds built from incomplete and uncertain information. They stretch the mindsets for better informed decisions, and they help to improve the judgment in the face of uncertainty. So these are the three scenarios we are talking about. We are talking about archipelagos, horizon, and surge. Just giving a little background what they really represent. In archipelago scenario, which you can imagine now, nations turn inward. They focus on borders, resources, and self-reliance. Trade slows down. And in the recent times, we have seen this approach. And here we say they achieve security through self-interest. In surge scenarios, the economic security through growth and productivity improves. There is a large impact of AI technologies reshaping the society. Here we are talking about security through growth. Horizon scenario, it's the ideal scenario to achieve net zero by 2050. Here we are talking about global cooperation which delivers deep decarbonization. Here the security is through mutual interest, so this is the desired scenario, but we might not achieve this. We'll just have a look into how the changes in energy system, talking about oil, natural gas, LNG, low carbon fuels, solar, electrification, and nuclear based on these scenarios. So we talk about oil, in all scenarios, by 2035, the global oil demand will decline. And the growth sectors for oil will be aviation, marine, and petrochemicals. No surprise, this is what we have been hearing since morning. Electrification of road transport will be the main reason for world reaching peak oil demand. Interestingly, in surge and archipelago scenario, 40% of oil production in 2040 will come from new oil fields. And you are seeing at the moment, a lot of work is being done in developing new oil fields. If we talk about natural gas, there is a strong economic growth in surge delays, peak global natural gas use until mid-2040s. With coal decreasing across Asia before 2030, natural gas will take a regional transition role in surge. In horizon scenario, the rapid transition to net zero emission means a near-term and rapid decline in natural gas demand. LNG has been really in the news in the recent times. LNG is expected to grow around 60% between now and 2040. LNG makes up around 13% of all the gas which is sold around the world today, and it will go to 20%. And it is the most expedient way to bring down emissions. Emissions from coal in India, China, and Southeast Asian countries can be brought down by backfilling with LNG. In all scenarios, LNG shows significant growth in near term, reaching to around 550 metric ton per annum by 2030. In horizon, as we have to achieve net zero by 2050, there is a decline in gas demand which starts in the 2030s. Future of low carbon fuels. Growth in low carbon fuels features in all three scenarios, but the production pathways really vary in all the scenarios. Today, ethanol from sugarcane or corn is the major biofuel, followed by biodiesel from soybeans. If we talk about sustainable aviation fuel, the production is growing, but it is significantly small while comparing it to ethanol. Currently, SAF is made from waste cooking oil and animal fat, and that is the key constraint. The constraint is feedstock. A number of projects all around the world to produce SAF based on these two sources are constrained, and some are not going ahead. So we have to look beyond these feedstocks. We need to look into agricultural waste or cellulosic feed, and that's what will kick off SAF journey. Solar PV will definitely be a dominant energy or renewable source. In all scenarios, coal stops growing as a source of electricity before 2030, with natural gas following by 2035. The combination of increasing battery production, AI grid optimization, including the use of battery storage, will definitely improve the utilization of solar PV. And that's what we are seeing. The cost is bringing for solar panels is coming down every single year, and there is a huge demand of solar being installed in all the countries, developing countries. In Middle East, where I mentioned I have spent some time, there are huge solar farms being built, and India is also doing the same thing. Electrification. Electrification share in the final energy will rise sharply, increasing about 10 percentage points per decade in both horizon and surge scenario. Electrification of transport leads the way, particularly we are talking about passenger vehicles and light road freight. Residential energy use trends towards full electrification even for heating. Industrial energy use shifts more slowly, but still electrifies over time. So definitely electrification will have a significant play in the coming years. We heard a lot about nuclear since morning, and definitely there is a resurgence of nuclear possible, and it is all contributed by AI contributing to a new generation of nuclear technologies. In surge scenarios, the small modular reactor, SMR, comes into picture, and what really will enable that is assembly line production, which will bring down cost and make it a plug-and-play concept for nuclear customer experience, what we say by 2040s. Nuclear will find a new home, and that will be in shipping, which is currently only in the defense space or military space we see nuclear submarines. So combined CO2 emissions from energy and industrial processes and land is expected to peak by 2030. Paris coal, if we think about, can only be delivered by extensive carbon capture and direct air capture. In the medium term, the world needs large-scale carbon capture in the industry. We need something like 2,000 to 3,000 large-scale carbon capture facilities, and currently we have only 100. Existing business models are really in their infancy and largely dependent on government subsidies. So what will enable this is the new business model need to come up, which can be a combination of the technology providers, operators, financial institutions, and aggregators, which will enable what we call it a carbon capture as a service. So we really need to see these coming in the near future. That brings me to takeaways, a lot of takeaways, but what I'll say is future of energy is electricity. Hydrogen and bioenergy are important. Fossil fuels will definitely lose market, and the transition will take time. Overshoot appears almost inevitable. The journey to harmonize energy security with decarbonization is complex, but not impossible. A bold policy, innovation, and collaboration can enable achieving net zero by 2050. The future demands integrated strategies that scale clean technologies, ensure equitable access, and build resilient energy system. The time to act is now towards a future that is both secure and sustainable. And let's work towards it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Guminder Singh. Mr. Singh deliberated on exploring the balance between energy security and decarbonization. You have reminded us that the transition cannot come at the expense of energy security because there is no sustainability without stability. You have also talked about 3 scenarios. Future data-driven system and technology-driven development will require seamless blend for sustainable growth. The way forward, as you have shown, will be through balance, scaling proven technology like renewables and gas while steadily advancing hydrogen, biofuels, and CCUS. Thank you, Mr. Singh. Our next speaker from Exins, Mr. Siddhartha Saha, Managing Director, Exin India, combining operational insights from his illustrious career of more than 2 decades in the downstream sector. Over to you, Mr. Saha.
Thank you, sir. Very good afternoon to all of you. Before I start my presentation, I feel I have to acknowledge that I feel very, very privileged to be part of this august and distinguished gathering of industry leaders and to be addressing the audience here in this, I would say, CAP session that would in many ways set the pulse of the discussion that is going to happen in the next 2 days. So we have the daunting task in hand to talk about sustainable future for refining. Okay, so I'm duly, respectful of what is a sustainable future, right? It's a almost unimaginably wide canvas, right? So the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 goals that are there, try to give some dimension to it, some reference points in it, but still it's at a very, very high level. So when we talk about sustainable future for a core industry like refining, it could be, there could be no end of what can be said. But for this presentation, we will, I'm coming from the background of a solution provider, technology solution provider. I hope you know, all of you, what Accents is all about. So from the lens of that background, I would limit the scope of this presentation. When I talk about sustainable future, it touches upon the Sustainable Development Goal number 7 and 13, which are to do with access to clean and affordable energy, and to climate action. So, and when we talk about it in these goals in the context of refining, we are going to use the basic well-known framework of GHG reporting protocol, which is the trifold scope, as the framework on which we will try to develop some ideas. So with that, if we straight away dive into the subject, for refining sector in India, right, if we look at scope 1 and scope 2 emissions, I mean, it's a very, very well discussed and well identified, well acted upon subject today. But to summarize, at the current refining capacity of around 260 MMTPA, the total scope 1 and scope 2 emission of the refining industry can be estimated to be around 77 million tons of CO2 per year, which is about 3% of total energy-related emissions of the country. So it's not an insignificant number. It is something definitely, all of us are here and we are talking about it because we take the sustainability goals seriously. So this is something to be worked upon, and there can be so many different, imperatives that drive action on this. But I think the most compelling imperative that makes us talk about it and think about it and act on it is the fact that all Indian refining organizations have explicitly set scope 1 carbon neutrality, scope 1, scope 2 carbon neutrality goals, very time-bound goals ranging from 2038 to 2046. Goals have been set, and let's look at what that entails. So refining scope 1 and scope 1 emissions, if we try to look at it, where CO2 emissions, where are they coming from? What we will see is that for sure there are the big, emitters, the hydrogen production, it's quite well known. Please don't pay very specific attention to the numbers. It's just to give a perspective, because each refinery with its own configuration will be positioned at a different place in the spectrum. But broadly, the biggest emitters in the refining processing chain are well known, which is hydrogen production unit and FCC. But underlying the entire flow scheme, you have the fired heaters, process heaters across the refinery, which together account for at least 60% of the scope 1 emissions. And then there are other parts of the refinery that contribute something. Now, when we are trying to address these emissions, What are the steps? I think the previous speakers have already spoken about it. Incremental energy efficiency improvement is the bedrock. So this is something that has been a continuous development over the last 30 years, I would say. I mean, refinery energy efficiency improvement has been a continuous activity. And as Dr. Maitra pointed out, today there is still way to go harnessing process intensification, advanced equipment innovation that is happening that can take us some way ahead on that. But we also have to remember we are talking about net zero goals. So yes, energy efficiency improvement will take us a long way, but we have to make, I would say, dents into the other big ones, which is addressing or incorporating low carbon hydrogen. This in Indian context is very well thought out, very well, I would say, acted upon also to start with green hydrogen incorporation. So apart from green hydrogen incorporation, if you see together, carbon capture has a definite role to play, right? So if you look at the FCC, for example, right? I mean, FCC doesn't generate CO2 because it's a fuel. FCC is generating CO2 from the process itself. You cannot avoid, say, CO2 production from a FCC process. So if you talk about abatement of CO2 emission from FCC, ultimately at some point, carbon capture has to be thought about. Carbon capture technologies, as we all know, have reached a certain level of maturity. But the key challenge when it comes to India is that sequestration opportunity of captured CO2 is, I would say, not visible to the industry as it is today. And utilization is also something that remains quite challenging, CO2 utilization. So given all that context, what we feel is that electrification of fired heaters is one of the key levers that has to be explored, has to be harnessed in order to move ahead in making any kind of meaningful progress. I would say, not meaningful, I would say any kind of quantum progress in reduction of scope 1 emission from the refinery probably has to be achieved with electrification of process heating. And that moves us to solutions, okay? But this purpose of this presentation is not just to talk about solution, but the first thing that anybody asks is the solution available? So here we would like to say that indeed a solution is available, right? So what we show here is electrical tubular heater, radiant electrical tubular heater of Herte Petrochem design, which is part of Accents. So why we are bullish about this is that this is a very, very robust model of electrical heating. Electrical heating typically, so far, I think for a lot of people it brings to mind the situation of immersed electrical heaters, which have well-known limitations. Here we would like to say that this design of electrical heater overcomes all those known limitations. It is something that is built upon the foundation of the long and rich, experience and knowledge base of fired heaters, right? So it is something that is suited for a wide range of services. Here I would, make the sweeping statement that if you take any refining service other than the SMR, we believe, at least as far as the refinery is concerned, I'm not talking about the steam cracker, as far as the refinery is concerned, we can confidently say today that this is a solution that can be harnessed to electrify existing heaters, and it can be used to implement electrified new services, whether it's for new grassroots refining units or biofuel units, where it is kind of an imperative. So why do we consider this to be, technology availability is one thing, but the importance of this solution for Indian refining industry, if we try to put some perspective into that, I think there's a trifecta that is in effect here. Today the solution, yes, it's available, but if we take the context of Indian refining today, by no means India has given up the dreams of becoming a refining hub. That is very much alive. It has perhaps been scaled down to some extent, but the objective is very much there, right? At the same time, all the refining organizations, as I mentioned, have the net zero goal, right, which is to be met. And then the third part of the trifecta is the tremendous boom in renewable power generation that is happening in our country today. I think on that curve, we are ahead of, almost any other part of the world. So when you bring all that together, and when I talk about renewable power, it can be very well be solar, it can be wind, and then today we are hearing so much, and I think over the last year we are hearing so much about the potential of SMRs as potential source of decarbonized power for tomorrow. So if you take all that together, along with India's ambitions for refining in a net zero path, electrification of process heaters is a key area to address. So that is one of the key messages we wanted to bring to you today. With that, let's change our perspective to scope 3. Okay? So scope 3, like scope 1 and scope 2, it's relatively simple. You talk about abatement, right? Scope 3, it is not so much about abatement directly, because obviously it's scope 3. Scope 3 basically allows us to assess how much can we expect the relevance of our existing business model in a decarbonized world, right? So from that perspective, if we see, what we see, the key messages for refining are well known to all of us. One is diversify towards chemicals, right? Because that's the demand of oil products which remains most resilient among all decarbonization scenarios that we have. And the other is that when we see that for fuel products, the refinery is somehow, I feel, that is always going to, no matter how much you switch to chemical, a refinery is going to stay relevant as a producer of liquid fuels for mobility. Okay? So if that sector is moving on to biofuels or other ways of decarbonizing, refineries have to couple up or fall in line or align themselves with that vision of the market. So just to quickly look at where we are on that, crude to chemicals, I'm sure, is going to be a very, very important subject of discussion in this event. And so we will not get into the technology part of it. What we would like to highlight, something that has already been talked about, is that when we think about crude to chemicals and scope 3 management together, it is not just improving the petrochemical intensity index, it is also incorporation of alternate feedstock, non-fossil feedstock into the complex as part of its feed slate on one side, and on the other side, it is imperative also to establish circularity of the products. When these come together and circularity is established across the chain, then only meaningful scope 3 address is achieved. The other key area of scope 3 consideration for refineries is biofuels. We all know this. So here again, we will not be talking about biofuels technology. A lot of it is going to be talked about during the session in the coming days. What the point we wanted to make is that why refining in particular? In principle, biofuel projects can come anywhere, right? The feedstock is spread out all across the country, all across the globe. Anybody can, in principle, today launch a biofuel project. But in real world, if you see the nature of the processes involved, right? We are ultimately, if the target is to produce hydrocarbons and handle hydrocarbons, okay? What we are trying to say is that the refining sector still has and will have an enduring role to play, because, okay, you start with feedstock and technology, that's fine. But from that point onwards, everything you talk about project execution, you talk about operating experience, operating practices, you talk about maintenance practices, you talk about access to supply chain. No other, segment of the economic biosphere, I would say, is as equipped to couple up with the biofuel value chain as refineries are. And when the part of your market is getting substituted by the biofuels, the best thing for refineries remains to couple themselves with the various platforms of biofuel technologies that are available today. Now, last point I want to make is that we have talked about Atmanirbhar Bharat, energy source for it. For that, among the various bioenergy sources that are going to be talked about, the one that we would like to I would say, put forward here is an integrated platform for going from biomass, agricultural residue or other kinds of non-food biomass to drop-in hydrocarbon fuels, which is the demand of the day, be it SAF or be it any kind of other fuel like renewable diesel or renewable naphtha. The biofuel technology platform, which is essentially a development on the well-known gasification and Fischer-Tropsch synthesis route, is something definitely that we feel that it can fit into the future that India is looking for itself. So we have very detailed information availability at our stall in the exhibition here, but if I quickly look at it, it is agnostic to wide range of feedstock. The most key feature of this as compared to alternate biomass to fuel pathways is that its ability to integrate additional energy, additional renewable clean energy into the final product it delivers. We don't rely on the energy that is inherent in the biomass, which is low, which is a key challenge for biomass-based energy. This chain is very amenable to addition of renewable energy into the chain in order to get better productivity of drop-in fuels out of it through the incorporation of green hydrogen. And finally, the product slate is very clean and can be adapted to SAF, but of course to other products if required. So if in India we are targeting to harness the bioresources that are available and meaningfully go to contribution into the liquid fuel demand, into transportation fuel demands in a clean way that is needed, then this is a good platform. So this is just to say that as compared to fossil reference, this achieves about more than 90% CO2 footprint saving. So okay, I'll just skip all this. So coming to conclusion, I would stress the fact that Indian refiners have declared net zero target, and electrification, as I elaborated, is going to be a key part of it. Mature technology is available for it. While approaching scope 3, we are maybe not discussing scope 3 management in an integrated way, but we are certainly discussing the pieces of it, the COTC, the biofuels, but all of it needs to be put in the context of complete scope 3 mitigation, as I wanted to show. And lastly, the biofuel-based, FT and gasification-based platform can serve as a viable way for India to harness its bioresources into fulfilling its requirement of clean fuels. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Saha. Mr. Saha presented a holistic approach for addressing Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3 emissions. He also mentioned energy efficiency and electrification of process tubular heaters. He mentioned how biomass, lipids, and recycling can be building blocks for petchem molecules. And Bioenergy Hub will be the key enabler for the entire value chain utilization for sustainable energy. Our next speaker is Mr. Rajesh Samarth, CEO Chevron Lummus Global, an industry veteran in refining and petrochemicals. He oversees CLG's strategic direction, championing innovative technology and catalyst development. Over to you, Mr. Samarth.
Hello? 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 Okay. So you okay if I walk around a bit? I hope so. Yeah. So first of all, I want to thank CST for giving second chances. It's my second time speaking here after morning. Hopefully I'll do a little better than morning. So thank you, CST. So we hear a lot about sustainability, but let me start by saying this. Hydrocarbon is the elixir of life. The only reason we enjoy this kind of living is because of hydrocarbon. First started with coal, 20th century, everything you saw was because of oil and oil-derived products, fuels, fossil fuels. Too much of anything is not good. Anthropogenic CO2 formation has climate change. And we all agree something needs to be done about it. And that's why we talk about sustainability. So what do we need to do for that? We need to move from fossil fuels to sustainable energy sources. And we heard from other speakers a lot about different kinds of those. And we know that, yes, crude oil-based transportation demand is going to go down, electrification is going to happen, but there are going to be different patterns around the world. It's not going to happen the same way everywhere. Maritime fuel is also a big consumer of oil, right? There, displacing that is a little more difficult. All of this also requires regulatory framework. It is not very clear. We heard from one of the speakers in the morning that the Europeans have made a mess of it. He challenged that maybe Indians can do a better job of it. I hope so. I hope we can. So the timing of the shifts is not very clear. So this really causes challenges to refiners. What should we do? Now with challenges come opportunities, right? One thing that we see, someone talked about that the peak oil was going to happen in 2000 something, it didn't happen, and probably peak oil is not going to happen in India anytime soon, because that's the only way you're going to grow your refining capacity from 258 to 300 and then probably 400 one day, right? And significant part of that is going to come from the demand for petrochemicals. So refineries have to support sustainable production, and it does require some step-out solutions, and we'll see what the solutions are. Now, a lot of this stuff you already know, you heard from speakers. When you talk about renewables or sustainability, it basically to me means two things. One is renewable, that means some kind of a biosource. And second one is circularity, that you produce it and you again reprocess it. So in renewables, the biggest one is lipids going to SAF or renewable diesel. It's basically something which is coming from seeds or used cooking oil. Both of those come from farming. So it comes back to the same question that if I want to increase its production, I want to have more farmland which is used for fuel. Is that a good thing? Used cooking oil, there is only so much of it. Unless we start getting a lot more fried food, there is not going to be a lot more used cooking oil. Alcohols to jet, on the other hand, actually does provide more opportunities, because the production of alcohol possibilities are much more, and it's happening a lot in India, right? Ethanol being used in gasoline. And in fact, I want to say that someone who once did a calculation and said that the number of HEFA and SAF projects announced in the world, there is not enough feedstock for those projects today. So you got to think about that. Alcohol to jet is good, but there is a challenge there, which is it is more capital intensive than HEFA. The next one is you can do syn fuels, which is Fischer tropes. You do require deep pockets for that. So what I'm having here with you is I'm having a more of a frank conversation that what are the challenges over here. You can do e-fuels that requires even deeper pockets. It's very CapEx intensive, OpEx intensive. Lignocellulosic. The feedstock is not a problem, but the technology is not exactly quite there yet. It needs to be developed, but it will still be more expensive than fossil. Circularity, we all know. Everyone is talking about waste plastic. There is opportunity with tire. So when is the right time for renewables? It depends. SAF, for sure, everyone would say that SAF has future, because we know that rest of the transportation will be electrified. Air travel is almost impossible to electrify. So SAF has its, again, own challenges with limited amount of HEFA feedstock. So you can use all the other things I talked about to make SAF, but the price of the SAF is going to be significantly higher than what comes from jet fuel today. So how does it happen? Only two ways. I mean, actually only one way. Society has to be willing to pay the higher price for it. As long as the other one is available, people don't want to pay. So it has to be one of the two ways. There has to be either government subsidies, which are difficult, or there has to be government mandate and regulation. It is happening slowly. We saw that in India by 2030, there is mandate for making 5% SAF. And eventually it's going to go up. But it's going to be a slow journey. I'm sure you follow news. A number of projects are going slower than expected because people are not willing to pay the premium. We talk about net zero. Some countries talked about net zero by 2035, some said 2040, many said 2050. Today, if you talk to experts, most people believe that 2050 target is net zero is essentially unattainable. It's going to be much longer. I think India has actually a reasonable target of 2070. So, I'm going to talk to you about a different kind of sustainability. Eventually, we have to go to net zero, but the path to net zero is a bit arduous, it's long. So I'm going to first talk about a different kind of sustainability, which is sustainability of your core business. That's your first priority. No matter what, you got to invest a lot more to get into the renewable sustainable solutions. But in order for that, you need capital. That capital only comes by making your current core business profitable. So reliability, operability, flexibility, they are the key to your profitable margins in your core traditional business. You got to do energy efficiency. So there, you can do energy efficiency the regular way as well as you can do electrification. That's important. So you heard about 100 refineries probably are going to close around the world in the next 10 years. A lot of those are the old refineries. And why are they closing down? Because they didn't keep on investing in improving their operation. So over a period of time, they are not as competitive. And that's a problem when I talk to a lot of people. What they say is that, this thing looks pretty good. Maybe we should invest in it. But, the management doesn't want to invest because they want to invest only in renewables. Don't fall for that. What I say is that you got to keep on looking at projects for your margin improvement, for revamps, or some new projects, because it's only the sustainability of core business and its profitability that is your bridge to the future sustainability, which is going to be eventually net zero. So in order to make your existing business sustainable, what do you need to do? Lots of ideas. Everyone talks about petrochemicals. The simple mathematics of petrochemicals have the olefins have a higher ratio of hydrogen to carbon compared to oil. So hydrogen addition is very important, and you got to make things lighter. Hydrocracker is very important, hydrocracking. You got to think about how can I make higher value products. One is lubricants, make more lubricants. You're using the oil with hydrocracking, and you are hydrocracking it to lighter feedstocks such as naphtha for petrochemicals. Doing full-fledged conversion of your existing asset to process a HEFA kind of feedstock is also challenging. The heat of reaction, because of the oxygen contained there, which converts with hydrogen to water, that is tremendous. So when you convert that, you will find that the capacity of your existing hydrotreater will go down when you convert that to a HEFA kind of hydrotreater. So the best thing for you to do is you can do co-processing. Other things you can think about. When you talk about energy transition, it requires electrification, that requires batteries, battery material, anode gate material, require needle coke or synthetic graphite. You can do that by repurposing your coker with right kind of feedstocks. And residue upgrading is something that you can always think about. So really, there are issues. We talked about affordability is an issue, geopolitics is an issue. So the landscape is always changing. Adaptive innovation of your core business is a key to your future sustainability. Another important thing, catalyst. Lots of advances have been taken in the catalyst arena in all the different technologies, and they will keep on happening. Lots of good ideas. You know, we at CLG, and I'm sure a number of people over here and out in the audience also, they have programs for improving the catalyst to improve the yields as well as selectivities. We'll keep on doing that. Got to embrace new solutions. Don't shy away from embracing new solutions for your fossil business as well. When you talk about doing something renewable, and there are sometimes step-out technologies, someone made a comment that start small as well. Don't always think about something big. Be bold, right? You got to use AI and digital tools. That is also very important tool in order to improve your operational efficiency. And think about step-out technologies. And I'm going to give an example to you of a step-out technology, something that we are working on together with Nestle at CLG. And that is, how do you convert woody biomass, which is in abundance, to sustainable aviation fuel? And that's something which really takes our evaluated bed kind of platform to convert solid material. So think about solutions like that. That's just one of the solutions. So it's adaptive innovation and adaptation of these new solutions. That is what will ensure sustainability of your existing refineries, which will give you the money to plow into the new sustainable solutions for renewables. So together, we can figure out how to meet the needs for present and future. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Samarth, for the insightful perspectives. You have rightly said, future of refining is both challenging and full of opportunities. The transition to sustainable energy sources requires us to navigate uncertainties, adapt to regional demands, and embrace new technologies. You have also told that sustainability of core business is the bridge to a sustainable future. And by leveraging AI, digital tools, and adaptive innovation, integrated solutions, we can enable and enhance refinery sustainability and meet our decarbonization goals. Thank you. Welcoming our next speaker, Mr. Keith Couch, Senior Director, Honeywell UOP Global Business Development Function, a thoughtful leader on the refinery of the future with over 30 years of innovation. He is an author with 23 publications and an innovator with 34 US patents. Over to you, Mr. Couch.
Thank you. And thank you to the CHT for having me out today. This is my 43rd trip to India. And a lot of old friends here from my first trip to India back in 1999, so thank you very much. Today, when we talk about the energy transition, a lot of conversations about new tech and the need to embrace new technology. I'm going to be going into that a little bit more deeply. But first, to make the lawyers happy, similar as others, I am going to be making some forward-looking statements. I am going to be making some predictive statements. Please treat them as such. When we look at project development, one of the fun things about my job is the ability to travel the world and work pretty much on every single major configuration and project in the world. And there's three things that continue to be true across all that experience. The first and number one thing, as excited as we are about the technologies, the project has to be bankable. And with that, less than 5% of technology proposals that get issued to the market actually make it through to a constructed project. As an overall industry, that's a tremendous amount of waste. We've got to get better at understanding it's not about tech, it's about the financial solution. The technology is how we deliver upon those financial commitments. Flexibility. You just heard that with Rajesh. We have to be a lot more flexible. Flexible between diesel and kerosene and jet, flexible between bio feedstocks and the mineral estate, flexible in our business models as well. How do we make investments today that do not end in regretted capital? I have to be able to move and transition into a future that is going to be driving for a higher level of sustainability. Doing more with less. It's not just about bio. I love the theme that you've heard today. We have to drive higher energy efficiency. We have to get out of our own paradigms, which means that we have to do investments differently than we have in the past. It doesn't mean that we have to forego risk mitigations, but it does start to say we have to change the way we evaluate risk. I've heard a lot of communications today about being progressive, doing new things. I loved the minister's commentary on growth for India. If you're going to grow and you're going to do it bankable, flexible, sustainable, you have to mitigate that risk differently. You have to be more aggressive in how you adopt new technologies. When people talk about efficiencies, I've asked many, what do they mean when they say, I want to be more efficient? Well, you know, efficiency. No, I don't know. Well, now I do. Over 103 invitations to bid distilled down to 5 fundamental efficiencies wrapped around the cash to pay it. Carbon. We have to do more with less. We have to put the right molecules in the right place and do the least amount of work to get it to its highest value state. Hydrogen. I can almost tell you for each region, each country, each producer, what the right technology solution is going to be by the cost of their hydrogen. Hydrogen costs in India have to come down. When we get those two right, utilities, got to get them down. Again, investments in energy efficiency, we're not seeing enough of it. Right? We're relying on the old steel to try to do that job. When we get the hydrogen utilities correct, emissions come down. Water. It's one of the biggest challenges in your major competitor to world markets and a lot of your imports. It's the Middle East. Where your hydrogen costs are high, their water costs are extremely high. Those 5 on the outer ring are in tension with the capital to pay for it. When we look at traditional first-generation crude to chemicals, we're looking at a complex that looks fundamentally like this. We're stuck in a refiner's mindset. We're going to dish off the things the refiner doesn't want to that steam cracker. And we've kind of transitioned in a lot of mentality of instead of using the FCC as the trash can, let's use the steam cracker as the trash can. Steam crackers operate where? About 850 degrees Celsius. That's a really expensive trash can, especially when you're putting up towards a 1 weight% steam in that trash can. Can you make other things from a cracker than ethylene? And the answer is yes. Should you? And I would argue the answer to that is no. Everything that comes off the steam cracker, I can make more efficiently in another catalytic process. The only one I haven't been able to beat so far is that ethylene. Aromatics, great position. When I start looking at, I'm a fuels producer, I'm a steam cracker operator, I'm an aromatics, and I want to do this as a grassroots project. What you have here is the business model for the Middle East, as it was about the third quarter of 2023. We had 13 major crude to chemical projects moving forward in the Middle East. By the third quarter of 2025, how many were left? 1. What happened? Those costs escalated to the point where 400,000 barrel a day refining capacity translated into 54 billion US dollars worth of investment to realize this objective. And you realize suddenly, I can't do things like the past. They're not bankable. All right, so let's pick the mood up a little bit. Throughout the day, having a couple of meetings, I'm surprised at how people are talking about the decline in refining, the decline in crude, the decline in the stuff that refiners do. When I start looking at it, this is the bright spot in the world. India's where it's at. You've got the biggest growing market, and you've got the forecasted longest term demand and growth for refined fuels. And what I love about that is there's no better place to make those investments than here. Should be. China's in the process of peaking already. There's currently 2 major crude to chemical projects still going on in China, and we've gotten to the point where the Chinese government is starting to restrict that growth to where if you add a new project, you actually have to shutter an older, smaller, less efficient asset or multiple assets. What does that tell you? They're going to continue to grow. They're going to continue to do new projects, but they're doing it more efficiently. PX projects in China are now 2.4 million tons on a single train. Over the last 5 years, we've taken out about 25% of the steel and the capital cost. We've taken out 30% of the energy. And we've grown that economy of scale to match with the textiles and the fabrics, the bottles and shirts that the world's wanting. The same thing in PDH technologies. Almost the same numbers except in reverse. We've taken out 30% of the capital, 25% of the utilities. And they're continuing to do it. But India is where that growth is. Do we need flexibility to be able to move with the markets? Yes. Do we need to move with the feedstock availabilities? Yes. But if you ask me why I'm excited to be here, it's because India is the place in the world where we're going to continue to see that growth. Fundamentally, one of the challenges I have is when people say, I want to invest in the future, but here's today's price set. If you're going to move to the future, you have to do it with not only the tons of materials you're going to produce, but the price sets and the business vision to actually move there. India R&P demand by product. One of the things that we see growing is definitely that naphtha piece and moving into petrochemicals. It's not important that these numbers are exactly spot on. It does concern me when I put this up, and a lot of my team members came back and said, but Keith, India's got a lot of plants that are shuttered, and that really bothers me because the demand and the growth is there. Those shuttered assets, to me, tell me it's a high-cost producer. Those are opportunities because the market is coming for you to make those volumes and those tonnages here. One of the ways we're trying to help that model is when we look at the naphtha demand in the world, why is petrochemical naphtha growing? And it's growing to feed that number one petrochemical growth, that's ethylene. That's going to naphtha crackers. Great. The problem that we have is those naphtha crackers aren't moving forward because they can't meet the hurdle rates for investment. It became evident about a year and a half ago, there's only one net exporting country in the world for ethane, and that's the United States Gulf Coast. There's other countries that have ethane. What's specific about the US that makes it a merchant market opportunity? It's fundamentally the geology. It's the storage. It's the caverns that exist in the US Gulf Coast that allow us to turn it on and turn it off to fill up each ship. But those ships, there's a 5 to 6 year waiting list. Those ships cost, for the 10 that you would need for a full supply chain, are going right now for about $1.3 billion worth of infrastructure, just for the ships. And if you're going to wait for them. So suddenly we realize there's a global demand for on-purpose ethane. When we look at the available feedstocks, the world is becoming flush with light naphtha. So what do? We need more ethane. We have light naphtha floating around. I don't need to build crude units, not on day one. There's so much light naphtha available on the market. Let's use that as a feedstock. And we convert that light naphtha to ethane. You have an optional propane stream. But what we're finding out from the market is that most steam cracker operators, they're in the propylene business only because it's a co-product that they thought they had to make. Here we're going to enable over 80% conversion of that feedstock to the thing you really want, which is the ethane feeding the cracker to make ethylene. That light olefin yield goes up so much, I'm able to reduce the feedstock content by about 50%. Right, so in the future, I'm only going to need half the feedstock that a naphtha cracker would otherwise need. That naphtha cracker also has a whole back end that's designed for liquids. Here, I've eliminated all that back end. Most of the liquids are gone. Reduces the capex per ton of olefin by over 30%. Much more efficient way at getting to ethylene. So here's what those projects are looking like in the future. Again, do I need to go all the way back to crude? No. Not as long as I could secure that supply chain for light naphtha. And there's many trading firms that will sign those long-term contracts. I love what Rajesh said about hydrocrackers of the future. They're going to be defined by their C7 minus conversion. They're light naphtha feedstocks. Does that light naphtha go directly to the steam cracker? I would say no. Feed it to that NEAP unit. What's the other benefit? The higher in conversion we go, we make more isos. We make more things that the steam cracker does not like to convert into ethylene. It makes pie gas, it makes pie oil. In this, we're able to drive the overall conversion upwards of complete conversion across the asset. Not leaving that piece to have to ditch into residual fuels. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. Structural shifts. Gasoline. We continue to see a drive for octane in the markets. Anytime we start thinking about higher propylene FCC units, which India is moving towards, I'm also making more butylenes. What do we do with those? Ionic liquid alkylation. Whether you're going to use it in India or not, it's a low sulfur, high octane blend component with a lot of RVP soak. I could soak up more of those C4s, the C5s, and the C6s into the gasoline pool and still make my octanes. Diesel, hydrocracker conversions. Again, another plug for Rajesh. The changes in catalyst technologies, drive those first. Get everything you can out of latest catalysts, and then do the revamps for other things. Jet. How hard is it to make jet? I get asked that question a lot because that's the one thing that continues to grow in the world. What do we see? Existing operations have so much flexibility, jet's not going to go short. All it is an extra draw on the crude column. Ethylene continues to drive and lead the world in petrochemicals. Propylene, several ways to get there. Naphtha, that growth is being driven by petrochemicals. It shouldn't have to be that high. We want to earn more cash by consuming less feed. Refiners earn cash by processing the maximum amount of barrels through an asset. Petrochemical operators earn cash by minimizing the amount of feedstock it takes to make their end product. Flexibility in the business model requires that petrochemicals and refining have to coexist. All too many times, refining organizations don't understand the difference between how I earn cash off of those two products. So with that, I thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Couch, for insightful perspective. You have deliberated on achieving bankable refining and petrochemical projects. You have highlighted that in a rapidly changing market, the future of refining depends on making projects not just viable, but bankable, projects that balance the societal mandate for sustainability with the need for operational flexibility and petrochemical growth. You have also mentioned efficiency metrics for business alignment, including carbon, utilities, hydrogen, water, and emission, with focus on capital, which will be crucial in creating sustainable pathway. And future has robust petrochemical growth potential with around 3 to 4x demand, which require focus efforts on increased capacity utilization and significant efficiency improvement in olefin investment. Thank you so much. So, gentlemen, we have all covered for the insightful perspective of all the 5 gentlemen. Now the floor is open for question and answers, and I request the organizers to facilitate that. The question is addressed to whom? Kindly name the person so that he can rightly answer the question.
The gentleman from Honeywell who just had this speak.
Is the mic on? So fundamentally, it's going to get down to the cost of that electricity and the dollar per ton that you're going to be able to convert it into. There's a couple of comments earlier on direct air capture. Once you get a hold of the CO2, direct air capture currently the fundamental way to get that, we're still operating at, I want to talk about scale. You get to scale, most of the quantities that we're seeing are just way too small to be industrially, commercially viable. Can you do it? Absolutely. The last time I looked at the numbers, which was only about 3 months ago, we're still between $500 and $650 per ton just to capture the CO2. And that's before we actually convert it into something. When we start looking at the quantity of electricity required to make that conversion, you're talking about, at the industrial scale, 2 full-size nuclear reactors, not SMRs, full-size nuclear reactors to get there. So we have a long ways to go. It's going to be a journey as we look at the utility infrastructure, the transmission lines, getting it from where it's produced to where it's going to be used. Most of the things that we see in industry right now, and why I'm so high on the SMRs, if they're not behind the meter, they're going to slow down tremendously. The amount of legislation we have and the politics involved in stringing lines and wires, while very efficient, a lot of people don't want to give up that land. Right, so I think the nuclear has to come first. Do we get enough in solar? Yeah, we're going to have transmission lines going a long way to get it to where it actually needs to be utilized. So once we get that infrastructure, which will come, it's a matter of time. Right now, what's the biggest project delay you have on utility infrastructure projects for a refinery? It's getting hold of the transformers. So I can do the other technology. It's a 3-year waiting list in many places just to get the electrical transformers to get up to your purchase order. Right? So is it coming? Yes. Will it take a while? Absolutely.
Thank you for your question. Any more questions from the audience? Show of hands, please.
Yeah, good evening, sir. Myself, Jitendra Jaiswal.
Could you please be a little louder, sir?
Yeah, good evening all. Myself, Jitendra Jaiswal from Indian Oil Corporation Limited. My question is again from Honeywell gentleman. As you have shown that the basically ATF and MS demand is going by 2x in 2045. And basically, HSD demand is 0.25x by 2045. But my question is again, what the technology you are going to adopt to rationalize the demand by 2045?
I think I got about half of that question. I'm having a hard time hearing from up here. I think the question was effectively that a progression of technologies associated with how are you going to get to that replacement of current fossil into renewables and bio. Is that correct?
No, my question is rationalize the production of HSD, ATF, and MS. You have shown in your slide that HSD demand is going to be 0.25x by 2045. ATF and MS demand is going to 2x by 2045. How we are going to rationalize the product demands? Because at present, if you see, approximately crude is having 50% of HSD, 17% of MS, 8 to 10% of ATF. What is the technology? It is, I think Honeywell is a pioneer on this, so you can explain better.
Now I got it. We are going to continue to see the rationalization of existing assets across the world. The two that are fundamentally in the gun sight, Western US assets that are very old, 1940s, 50s, 60s, and the same is going to be true in Europe, where cost of productions keep going up in a world where those assets aren't able to keep pace. All right, so where are the new constructions? Where are the new capacities coming from? I can design a new facility today to meet all of the requirements of mission controls and improve the efficiencies. I can more than triple the net cash margin of most of the installed base. Most of the installed base has been modified decade after decade. Every time a new emissions protocol or emissions standard comes in, clean fuel policy, I bolt something else on. And what we have is just a beast of that older, smaller. The 30, 40, 50,000 barrel a day refineries, can I save them? Well, it depends on your board of directors and who's going to make that investment. The biggest problem I'm seeing on crude to chemicals transitions for that old installed is now I'm going to move into petrochemicals. I'm still going to be a high-cost producer, and I don't have the scale. A lot of those facilities are going to be going out of business. At the same time that we see that rationalization, I'm also excited because I have over 600,000 barrels a day of refining capacity in the United States that's happening by expansions of those core assets. So a lot of the bigger firms, they're becoming more integrated. They're reducing the number of their facilities, and they're investing in the core. They're shedding the less efficient, and they're rolling those permits that they have for emissions and utilities and water into those new, much more efficient, lower cost of production assets. The same is going to happen in the Middle East. The same is going to happen in Asia.
Okay, thank you.